Are you filled with fear, doubt, worry about the future of our country? Do you feel the urgency to act before it's too late? If yes, then this podcast is for you. It's time for us to confront the critical issues threatening our nation's fabric, our democracy itself, regardless of our political stance. If you are ready to face reality, handle the tough questions, and find real solutions, then here's your host, Debilyn Molyneux.
Welcome to Terrified Nation. I'm your host, Debilyn Molyneux. Can we save it? Well, that's what we're exploring in this podcast series. And for me, the answer is yes, we can, and we must. On this show, we explore alternatives to being afraid and provide a good foundation for you to become an active citizen in your community. We interview guests who have gone from being afraid and angry, or sometimes hopeless, to become advocates for our nation and to live into the promise of our founders, each person dedicating themselves to a better future. Now, if you've listened for a while, you know I like to start each show with a question. And today's question is, what have you learned from people with whom you disagree? And to explore this more with us today is our guest, Egberto Willies. Now, if I say it right, it's Egberto Willies, only I'm not rolling my R's as quite as well as I should. But Egberto is a political news and opinion junkie who has a blog that's dedicated to providing its readers with news and fact-based information that matters to them. He also hosts the Politics Done Right show, which airs on all the social media platforms and a local Houston radio station. Now, I have to confess, Egberto and I have known each other for more than 10 years when we were both volunteers with Coffee Party USA. And Egberto, you might notice, sounds a little different than us because he emigrated to the US from Panama during his college years back in the decade. And he really has made a name for himself living the American dream. And I just want to say, Egberto, thank you for being here and welcome to Terrified Nation.
First of all, Debilyn, I'm honored to be on your program. I love the work that you do. From the time that you served the Coffee Party, I've always been a fan, specifically because you've always been even-keeled and have always been doing the necessary work. So again, I'm honored to be on your program.
Egberto, just thank you so much. And I'm so glad that you're here on the show today. We're going to start with an interview about a future that you would prefer to live. And then we're going to end with you talking a little bit about what you're doing in your community just outside of Houston. How's that sound to you today?
Sounds great. Marvelous.
Okay. Well, you're actually now becoming a research subject. And the research is to imagine a future that we really want for ourselves. So this is about your preferred future, not about the country. It's not about the globe, the world. And it's also not about likely or probable futures. This really is for your imagination. What do you want for the future? And so we're going to go and take a visit to your future life, somewhere 2 to 20 years in the future. What sounds right to you?
So let's end it at 20 years as
okay.
As
well,
you're
so
asking.
we're going to go and look at your life then 20 years from today. So let's get into our little campy time machine and we're going to go to 2044. And when we get there, I just want to remind you, you're observing your older self. And I'm going to ask you questions about what you see.
Okay.
Okay. So here we are. We're pulling into the 2044 station. And ding, we're getting out of the time machine. The first question that I have for you is just, where are we? Could you please describe where we are?
The United States of America remains the bastion of the world because we got to fight through all our differences. And I walk out of that train that you just talked about, I'm walking out of. And I feel like any other American, happy to be here, that I can go anywhere, and that everybody is a part of my world family.
All right, I'm gonna pull that in just a little bit more. And like, are you still outside of Houston? Are you living somewhere else in the nation or in the world? Where are you?
I am likely still in Houston, but I am a traveler. I go back to Panama often. I go to Miami, which is where my second Panama would be. And I would be able, but again, I've created a home in Houston. I am a Texan. I'm a Houstonian. I love Houston. I'll probably be here and I'll probably have all of my friends. But again, I will be feeling that joy that we're starting to talk about.
Oh, I love the joy. Well, here's the second question. As you're observing your 20-year older self, what will you be most proud of?
I would be the thing that I'll be most proud of, and I don't think that is hard for you to see why, is that no longer would I have to be conscious of what I look like. No longer I can actually exist in America, being able to fail in America, succeed in America, and not have to do that through the lens of how I look, but just how competent or not competent I am.
And so talk to me a little bit about like what you may have accomplished, your relationships. Is there anything in those realms that you might also be proud of
Yes,
in
well,
20 years?
I'm an activist, and I'm an activist, both a social, racial, economic activist. And that's the trifecta, if you will. And I would have the work that I've done both from a journalistic point of view, from an activist point of view, it would have been realized to such a manner that I'm no longer needed to do that work anymore. So the work would have been successful. It's done. And now we're living the dream.
So I'm gonna like say, so what you're most proud of is that your work is no longer needed
Right.
because
That
you succeeded.
exactly. We don't need somebody out there fighting on the streets. We don't need anybody there, trying to figure out why is that person doing that, etc. We've succeeded. We've really reached the dream, and that dream is we are actually judged by exactly who we are, our character, etc., etc., etc.
Well, so again, I want you to take a look at your 20-year older self and walk me through how you spend your day. You've accomplished all your objectives that you have in 2024. So what do you do with your time?
I get up in the mornings. I get myself prepared, try to, freshen up a bit, go over to the coffee shop and sit down. I'm known in the coffee shop, so as people come in, we just sit down and chat about regular happenings in America. What do we want to get done? As younger people come in, they know me as this old dad that, as that they come and they talk to and they tell me I'm having this problem today. My girlfriend did this today. My boyfriend did this today. I no longer have to worry about the other things. I'm just me now, living as somebody willing to help out others.
What do you do after the coffee shop?
After the coffee shop, I love reading, right?
Mhm.
And while right now I do a lot of political reading, etc., I'm probably now going back to my roots, which is engineering, and thinking about, I wonder how we could clean the air up a little bit better. I wonder how we could absorb some more carbon out of the air. Can we actually use some other form of energy? I would be doing all that sort of research because I don't have to be involved in the political engine anymore, right? It's almost working the way it should, so I can actually dedicate myself to my what used to be my first passion, but now my second passion.
And at the end of the day, when you're done mentoring some young people at the coffee shop and reading and working on your engineering projects, what do you do in the evening?
In the evenings, I have a nice meal and maybe sit down and watch a little bit of comedy on TV and call it a day, 24 hours or maybe 16 hours and go to bed.
So you might actually get some sleep.
I may start sleeping. You're right.
So for those
Yeah.
of you who aren't in on this joke, I know Egberto from when we've done some retreats when we were on the board together at Coffee Party. And one of the things he was just renowned for at the retreats was not sleeping. And so
Never. Yeah.
I'm really glad to know that in 20 years from now, when you've accomplished all your goals, you'll sleep.
Yes, I will.
Okay. And Egberto, so you've just described this really beautiful day for that's 20 years into your future. How do you feel most of the time?
Actually, I feel good. Look, let me tell you, as bad as things are right now, as bad as they are, I don't have that feeling of dread because I feel, just I imagine like you feel that we are making a difference in the work that we do, in how we talk to people and how we deal with people, that we can make a difference. And in that way, I am at peace with myself. But today, 20 years down, I don't even have to think about that. I am just there. And when you have that feeling of Whitney Houston had I don't remember if it was a movie or a song where it once like I exhaled. I exhaled. And it's like you exhale, all's good.
How you feel most of the time is
Uh,
content,
I am.
satisfied?
I love that. Actually, you said it better than I did. Maybe you're living vicariously inside of my head. But yeah, actually, yes, that's exactly right. I am content. And when one is content, you're for all practical purposes worry free. Yes.
All right. I like that. I like content and satisfied. Um, so again, I want you to just like observe your 20-year older self, and you're still in Houston, you're doing some traveling around the world. Your typical day involves mentorship and some engineering projects and some light comedy on TV and some sleep, most importantly of all. You're feeling content and satisfied. What can you identify as your 3 to 5, round numbers here, priority values? Or you might say qualities.
Well, let me ask what you mean. Are you talking about after 20 years, things that have been accomplished? So what are the priorities that I have now, or what got me there?
So as you're observing your life 20 years from now, if a stranger were looking at you, what would they note as, oh, this person lives by these values? What would those?
Ah, I mean, I'm no longer a Christian. I'm a humanist, right? But the thing about it is, I grew up in the Christian church, and the Christian church does represent the values that I believe in. In other words, treat someone as you'd want them to treat you. So they would always go out there and say, well, that guy, he knows how to treat a person. They would know that that is one of my major values. The other thing is that while I would love that we have poverty completely eliminated and we finally got to basic income, etc., people will still have needs, whether financially or otherwise, that they know that I'm a given person. And if I see somebody in need of some sort of help, I'd be there to provide that kind of help
Mhm.
to that person. And lastly, just to know that we will always have a downtime. Somebody in the family gets sick, someone of your friends gets sick, for them to know that there's a pillar that they can count on, that if something goes down with them, they're not alone. They can always pick up a phone or drop by the house and say, hey dude, I am down now. And they know that they have somewhere to fall.
So just to kind of recap, I heard dignity, like you
Right?
know how to live with dignity and to
Absolutely.
offer that to others, that you are generous and that you give freely to those who need whatever you have to offer. And then you're supportive or compassionate
Absolutely.
in ways that go beyond, financial generosity, and really
Absolutely.
uh, help people to feel better for
Hmm.
themselves. Those are some really nice qualities. We're about to get Zoom bombed here by a cat.
I love that. I love, that all, believe it or not, that always makes a video a bit more appealing when that cat shows its face.
Yes, this is Bobo when the video background doesn't ace him out. So, so Egberto, we've got this kind of really nice look at what your preferred future is in 20 years. And I want you to look now at the community in which you're living in 2044 and think about what does your community need to include or provide so that your preferred future is possible?
I want to make sure that my community, and I hope all communities, are a green community now. In other words, it's a community where it's livable, where there are livable spaces for people to enjoy. I'd like my community to be not a community that people are rushing home from work just to get by and go to work the next day. I'm looking for what I call a possible utopia. I mean, and again, people, when people talk about utopia in communities or whatever, they think it cannot be. I am saying it can be if we choose systems that allow that to be.
So I'm hearing that what your community needs to include or provide is a thriving environment that
Yes.
doesn't cause further harm to the planet,
Hmm.
but provides for make sure that everybody in the community has an opportunity to succeed and have their needs met.
Absolutely. And Debilyn, you see those types of community springing up all over Houston, right? They have their bike paths, their green spots, etc. Unfortunately, those communities aren't made for everyone. They're made for those who can afford to live in that lifestyle. They're made for those who can work from home, and they're working from home fine, and they feel like it's about noon, let me go take a stroll on the paths and nature. But it's not afforded to everybody. I want a community that where that is not just afforded to me, but everybody has that option if that's what they want to do.
Yeah, I can. One of the things I'm just going to point out here in the 70 plus interviews I've done on this question, nobody has said, I want my community to make my commute time longer. and
Yeah,
and I want things to not be available close by.
right,
Like nobody has said I want my life to be harder. It's
right.
all about community building where we have some assurity of basic needs being met
Mhm.
and not being in our cars for commute.
Absolutely. You know,
It's yeah. It's just funny when I think about like how we're planning communities today and actually what people want. And there's a big disconnect between those two things right now.
it's amazing because those communities that you're talking about, they are building them.
Yeah.
The problem is that they're not building them for most Americans.
Right.
They're building them for those who can afford it.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, just I as I'm recording this here in Maryland, I was looking at home values the other day, and single family homes are basically going to be starting at about $1 million here right now, and a townhome with some of those amenities that you're talking about are in
Hmm.
the 5 to 600,000 range.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so that just for affordability, that's just not affordable for a lot of folks.
Hmm. For
I would
most
say for
folks.
most Americans are not
Yeah,
able to do that. Well, we're down to the last question here, and this is one where I want you to really expand and tell people where they can get in touch with you because we're going to suck ourselves back into 2024 right now. And the question that I have for you is could you share a little bit about what you are doing today to help make that community of the future for your preferred future life possible? And then tell people
absolutely.
where they can find you and how they can listen to your radio show.
Absolutely. First of all, I believe that the biggest problem that we have in America today is people not being informed, or that people being informed incorrectly. In other words, I think that our media is a sham. Just about all of mainstream media, I think, is a sham. I think they are currently being worked by the folks who control us all. Uh, but the thing about it is that we still have a democracy. So we have agency, we have the ability to make changes, but we have to be willing to get away from our prejudices, come together and do that. I love a lot of the work that Reverend Barber is doing because one of the major, in my humble opinion, ways that we are dividing America or through all these different identities. I believe in identity politics. I think the reason we have identity politics is you, Debilyn, as a woman, you've had to work harder than any guy out there to attain what you've attained. Myself, as a Afro-Latino Caribbean man, I've had to work much harder to attain the things that I've attained. So I believe in identity politics to solve those problems. But also, the only reason we have identity politics, in my opinion, is that, well, not in my opinion, actually, I think it could fairly, it's fact-based, is that creating division among people allows those with power, a minority with power, to stay in control because we are so dependent on fighting each other that we cannot really see who is at fault, who's causing our problem. So
Well,
my wish, yeah.
yeah. So I just want to interject here. Longtime listeners of Terrified Nation will know that I call this class of people who seek to divide us the conflict profiteers.
Mm-hmm.
And so what
I love
Egberto
that.
is describing here is what I have referred to in the past as conflict profiteers. So go ahead, please.
Yeah, I love that. I love that term. In fact, I think I may steal it from you and use it on my program.
Please
Yeah,
do. I'm trying to
yeah,
popularize it everywhere.
yeah. Conflict profiteers. I love that. So the conflict profiteers are out there making sure that we are, in fact, divided. So my goal, you asked me, what am I doing within my community
What are
to
you
solve that
already doing?
problem?
Because you're doing a lot of stuff already.
Right. So I am trying to inform. And let me just say, for those that are listening who I hope at some time will listen to my radio show, don't be scared by tonality or how you hear it or whatever. We are the program and the blog is actually rated highly factual by different independent organizations. So what you can come here and really get true information at politicsdoneright.com is where I do my radio blogging. Egbertowillies.com and my Substack is where I put out my longer newsletters, etc. By the way, you are featured on today's newsletter for a great interview that we did at a conference that you attended.
Yeah. Well, I drove up to Baltimore to see you at Netroots Nation and get interviewed for your radio show on July 13th.
Right.
And little did we know that 8 days later, the whole thing was going to change.
Yes, yes. But it's amazing. Your interview was so apropos to a lot of what's happening right now because it goes right into how we have to address people if we want to go ahead and get the change that we really want. So the work that I'm doing is as an information agent. That's the number one part. I have a radio show in Houston on KPFT 90.1 FM, which is also on the Pacifica network, which is nationwide. We have 5 major stations. And also I'm on the board of the Pacifica network. But I think the thing that I get the most joy of is the interaction that I get from the newsletter, where it's a bit more thoughtful from all of my, I do video blogging. From my video blogging, the interaction that I get from that and the emails where we can actually exchange ideas, where people have not only learned from the newsletter that I put out, but where I've actually learned from them as well. Today was a good example where somebody replied to the email that turned into a radio show today. So I mean, it is a kind of communication and learning together that I think what we need to make that change in America, and for that I want to see in 20 years.
Yeah, well, and I just want to point out, like, part of why the question that I asked us all to kind of hold in our minds as you and I talked together today was, when was the last time you learned something from someone with whom you disagree? You
Yes.
embody that so well every day. You have a lot of practice with your daily radio show,
Mm-hmm.
and with your interaction. But I love how when you're on the radio, you're actually seeing who's there, like who's listening. They somehow tag you, and you call them out by name. So you're
Mm-hmm.
really calling in people, regardless of their ideology, to say, welcome. Let's have a conversation today. And I just really appreciate that about you and your work.
We are a community radio, and nearly half of my donors are either conservative or MAGA. And I have a daily caller. It's a strong MAGA guy. He always calls to give kudos and make sure that people continue to support the station. So it can happen, right? I mean, and it doesn't matter. People get scared sometimes if you disagree. Disagreement is a part of life, and even in this utopia that I'm talking about 20 years down, I know I'm going to be disagreeing sometimes with Debilyn.
Of course.
You know.
Well, and I want one of the things that we have taken so for granted in the United States here is that we think democracy is just a given.
Mm-hmm.
And I have started trying to reframe democracy is how we disagree and still move forward.
Yes. Yes.
So we disagree about what needs to happen and how to get there, but democracy is what lets us get to a better and brighter future.
I agree. And also treat and learning how to treat people, it's amazing because I told you about the percentage of my show that is populated by MAGA and conservatives, and of course progressives.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting because if you listen to the show since it's been daily, it used to be twice a week, now it's daily in the mornings. If you listen to my folks that used to call earlier on the show, and if you listen to their tonality now, it's amazing. It's like a family. We're all in there, and even in our chats, we're chatting and people are throwing spears, but in sort of, I don't want to say throwing spears in a loving way, but I mean, they actually enjoy the discussion.
Right. I was going to say there's something about the atmosphere of raucousness. Like we are a raucous family here in America.
Yes.
That those of us like me who are conflict avoiders, it's an acquired taste, but it's one we should acquire.
Yeah, it's amazing because I think as a country, we used to. I mean, if you look at the partisan sides, they used to be able to disagree and then have a cup of coffee later on and have a drink or whatever. And somehow we've gotten away from that. I mean, not that it was perfect before. We needed a lot of work, but
Yeah, but it was when before our members of Congress started going home every weekend, they would stay in DC most of the session, and their kids would be playing at the same school baseball game together or whatever. And so there was a lot more social opportunity to get to know the human behind the position that you're fighting in Congress. And a lot of those have been eliminated now.
Absolutely. But
and then you
with
add
the
in
work,
the conflict profiteers, and we could polish that problem forever. But mostly, I really want to give kudos to you, and I do want to close this show with an invitation.
Okay.
And here it is. This invitation is to think about your preferred future that you just outlined beautifully today, your utopia, and spend 5 minutes every day going through your daily activity in utopia, feeling the feelings that you have, and add in or include a sense of awe and wonder. And this is based on neuroscience research that shows that when we will subconsciously create that which we think most about. So the choice is ours. We can spend 5 minutes a day building or co-creating, programming ourselves to think about the future we like, or we can choose from those dystopian options that the conflict profiteers present to us. And for listeners of Terrified Nation out there, if you would like to participate in this research project and define for yourself what your preferred future is, go to americanfuture.us and click on the self-interview button. Egberto, I really just want to thank you for being with us today and sharing your preferred future with the Terrified Nation. And it's a great contribution that you're making, and it inspires me, and I know it'll inspire a lot of others to do more.
First of all, thank you. I'm honored to be on your program, and thank you for the work you're doing. You've been doing it a long time, and it has always shown results. So thank you.
And in another expression of gratitude here in closing today's show, I want to thank you, the listeners of the Terrified Nation, for giving a damn. We may be a terrified nation today, but we can do better. We can save the USA. Join me next time.
So that's it for today's episode of Terrified Nation. Head on over to iTunes or wherever you listen to subscribe to the show. You can get advance notice of new episodes and bonus content by signing up. Head over to terrifiednation.com and join us on the next episode.